This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to Late Boomers. Today, our special guest is Myron Welik, a veteran sales expert and entrepreneur who has sold his products on the Home Shopping Network, brokered partnership deals with major brands such as Heidi, Klum and New Balance, the New England Patriots, Lacoste, Sesame Street, Radio City Music Hall, and more.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Myron is the author of The Jackhammer Effect, How to Break Down Doors and Make Business Deals Happen for People Who Believe They Can't. He hosts the podcast, The Jackhammer Effect. He's a popular speaker and also brokers multimillion-dollar real estate deals. Welcome, Myron.
Oh, thank you, guys. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much.
We're happy to have you.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
You've been in business for 40 years. So please tell us about your background and your journey and how you came to find your life's work.
Well, I ran a business, apparel business, for about 20 years. Started in my late 20s, built it from zero to over 20 million. But I guess part of my lesson in life or my journey was that it was not meant to be beyond that. And I lost that business. That was in 2002, and it was a very tough, destructive bankruptcy that kind of left me with a lot of catastrophic self-doubt and depression. And I actually wrote a brief article about it. I called Starbucks Orphans, and I had it published by a local newspaper because I kind of believe that whether it's Starbucks or any coffee shop, when you're not feeling great about yourself and you want to be anonymous, or you want to talk to people and you want to stay there forever, a coffee shop was a great place to do that. So I could either become invisible or start talking to people and no one would bother me, and you kind of milk the coffee forever. So that's why I called it Starbucks Orphans, because I felt like an orphan. So it was appropriate. And it really left me devastated, not just obviously financially, but emotionally, and it hit me a lot harder than I ever thought it would. And I really hit rock bottom. There's no question. It took me 16 years, literally 16 years to come back. But my badass superpower is that I'm a jackhammer. And I know that. As a jackhammer, as the metaphor implies, you don't have to be in real estate. It's a machine used in real estate to dig holes where nothing else works. And it keeps going until it succeeds. Well, it's a great metaphor for life, of course, right? It's something that never stops. It keeps going. And someone called me a couple of years ago a jackhammer, and that's what kept me going. The other thing that kept me going was that I was forever young. All this happened in my late 50s and early 60s. It wasn't until 68, when I was 68, 67, 68, where I kind of reinvented myself. And I think my secret was two things. One is that I stayed young, meaning that people that are younger have only to go up, and they have to go out. They have to search. They have to find. They're beginning their journey. They're the early parts of their journey. So what I've learned in hindsight, it took me 17 years to learn this, or 18 years to learn this, by the way, in my journey, that how I survived, and it was a real, very bad time for me, my worst time in my life. But how I survived is that for some reason, even though I never felt like getting out of bed, I got out of bed, I kept going, I never stopped. So that's my parallel to, and my metaphor to being young. It wasn't consciously done. I wish it was. I'm not that good, but subconsciously I realize now that was my superpower, that I kept going. It wasn't going to be the end for me. So then about 2018, it took me 16 years. By chance in my networking, I met a young gentleman, 35 years old, starting a real estate business, and he was somewhere where he wasn't supposed to be. I was somewhere where I was supposed to be. Some people say somebody sent us both to meet. Who knows? It makes for a good movie, perhaps. But we did meet. We became friends, and more importantly, at that time, he could use my skills, which was finding money. He needed money to grow. His business was starting; it was exploding, and he needed dollars in real estate to grow. I found him over 10 million in private funding. And then one day we went looking for what's called in real estate an off-market property, which means an apartment building that's not listed on the general real estate docs or forums, MLS or Remax, whatever it's called. And he taught me how to find it. I asked him if he needed help, and he did, because like any entrepreneur growing their business, you can't do everything on your own continuously successfully. You definitely need, if you're smart, you need to delegate and find the right people. Otherwise, you're going to go nowhere fast. I did. I found him one, two. I'm remunerated. I asked him, maybe you'll hire me. He said, you don't want me ever to hire you, Myron, because you go as far as you can go. If I hire you, you're limited. One of the best advices he ever gave me. And after I started with him, then I realized I could do the same thing for many investors, obviously. So today, fast forward just 2.5 years, literally from 68 to 70, where I am today, I have over 60 investors, generated over $35 million of property acquisitions for my investors. I don't own any property. I find them off market properties that are multiplexes, which is apartment buildings, because a lot of
Wow.
them just don't have the time to look. And the good thing about real estate is they only buy it if it makes sense. And you also only get paid when a deal's made. Okay. So it becomes a win-win scenario. But I'm very good at it because it needed all my skills, which being a jackhammer, resourceful, creative. And I might add, I had no experience in real estate before. I just jumped into it.
Well, I have to ask you, why are you called the Jackhammer? And tell us what that means. And also,
Sure.
some people have called you a searching machine. So explain
Yeah.
further.
Well, like the machine is, a jackhammer is you bring a jackhammer where you conclude in construction, particularly anywhere in the world, that the current machinery you have is not sufficient to do the job you need to be right to the point. So you bring in what's called it's an English acronym, but it's known universally all over the world as a jackhammer. And what that machine does, it's like a big torpedo into the ground, and it keeps digging and digging and digging until it's successful. So which means it kind of like the metaphor, it never gives up. It perseveres, perseveres, where the other machinery you have is insufficient to do the job. What's kept me going and why I'm even talking to you and how I even found you is that I'm relentless. Now, for some people, it may be a little overwhelming, but for the vast majority of people, they love it. They wouldn't want to marry me. They wouldn't want to live with me, but they love it for a business opportunity. They love it for a business
Mhm.
opportunity because I don't give up and I'm always there and I bring them opportunity. Who wouldn't love it? So the jackhammer, being the jackhammer, has saved me. And that's why it's helped me reinvent myself and talk to you today. And the other reason I might say, which is important, that I want everybody to clearly understand how critical what I've learned lays over the last, particularly 2002 to 2020, is the other thing that kept me going. And believe it or not, was something very old fashioned. It's called love. I'm very, very, very lucky that I have a woman that's been married to me for 36 years. She didn't leave me. God knows, many of my friends would like to give her sympathy or condolence cards, but for staying with me this long. But it's the combination of being a jackhammer and having someone who loves you more than anything, and you love them, that gave me the kind of gas to sustain myself all through those difficult years.
Well, let's back up a little bit and tell us a little bit about what happened to cause you to lose that first $1 million business, and what did you need to do to recover and reinvent yourself?
Well, I just think I went too fast, and uh, I just was not smart. Went too fast, did not expand enough, did not adapt, and I made a lot of obvious business mistakes, and that caused me to lose it. And also, um, it just I just wasn't I wasn't a smart businessman, and it's truth. I just wasn't, and I didn't do what was needed to do fast enough to grow or expand or modify or change or reinvent myself until eventually it all caught up with me until I lost it, and it was just absolutely devastating. What I learned is that business, much like life, is a never, you can't sit still. Unless, of course, you want to go retire on an island, but I'm not ready to do that. Even if I had $100 million, I wouldn't do that. I'd always find something to do. I love making an impact in some way for people, for colleagues, for friends. So, what I've learned is that adaptation, constantly reinventing yourself, networking, for example, looking to mentors. The other thing I was fortunate to do, I found a mentor who was reasonable, coach, if you like to call, who's, and I could use his name. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Joe Fournier. He's been invaluable to me. A lot of things in life, Kathy and Mary, you never realize until you actually jump in and do it. And I also suffered from fear, which a lot of people do. I was terrified to do anything, and I would procrastinate. And these are diseases, terrible, terrible diseases. But what I realized is, there's nothing to fear, literally, like FDR said, but fear itself. That's exactly what happened. And once I started to do it, the fear became totally turned 360 degrees and became energizing, like the energizing bunny is, to use the old cliche. It became a catalyst for me to keep going forward. And I wanted to do more and continue to do more. So now I'm very, my advice to people is, find mentors, find coaches, but above all, act, 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 because there's nothing replaces massive action.
I love that. Well, let's talk about your book, The Jackhammer Effect. So
Yeah,
tell us who the book's for and how does one apply it? And also, I mean, have you found it to be a recipe for success?
I think it is. I think what I wrote the book, like I do a lot of things. It's a guide. It's a workbook. Everybody I think who reads it will adapt it, interpret it, and modify it and revise it for their own particular circumstances. It's also the kind of book which I love, is that you can pick it up and read till page 50 and then drop it and pick it up a couple of weeks later and go on to page 75 or go back to page 30 and make yourself notes, because there's room for that. It's a business workbook that gives you a step-by-step guide. It's not reinventing the wheel. A lot of it's obvious, but again, another painful lesson I learned in life: the obvious is not obvious. Okay, not at all. And it should be, but it's not. And I
It
learned
just
first
seems
things last.
obvious. It just seems
Exactly.
obvious in hindsight, right? Yeah.
In hindsight and intellectually, it does. But there's a very radical gap between the intellect conception and the actual execution. So I also learned a painful lesson that if something doesn't bring you a profit, purpose, or something of help to you, don't give it your time, energy, or attention. That's also, I've been very, very, what's the word? Stingy, I guess the word would be, how I use my time. So the book, I think, is a very simple, step-by-step guide, and inspiration for someone who's actually lived it. Be careful when you take advice from messiahs who never practiced or did anything what they're talking about, or they're too young to talk about. So
Yeah.
it's all my life experiences. So I talk from experience, but again, they're my experiences. It doesn't mean that's everybody's experience. So I want to keep it very general. It's a workbook.
And
Well,
as we
can you give us
mentioned
a
in our
few? I just wanted to find out if Myron can tell our audience a few of the ingredients for this recipe that he has.
Yes, yes, that's a great question. I can. I think one of the things that are very, very urgent to me is, I think I call strategic partnerships. Very critical, because strategic partnerships, like I put together Heidi, Klum, and New Balance. How I did that is a very cost-effective way of scaling your business profitably and in an accelerated way. How I did that is, the Heidi Klum at that time was 2012. If you remember, the Lululemon started to explode and rule the world, that whole athleisure wear, which is all over the place. Everybody's doing it today. This was 2010, 2012, not that long ago. And And Heidi still was, she wasn't yet America's Got Talent, but she was still all over the place. And she's an extraordinarily brilliant, talented businesswoman, besides being a great model and everything else. And the people that I was working with at that time had the license, the world license to her. She was still married to Seal, and she was just finishing her pregnancy. Okay, so this goes back a little bit. So the question became to everybody: what does she do after she's pregnant? Like, what do we do with her as a business opportunity? And my idea came up with, at that time, after some research, I said to the person who had the license, not me, why don't we, team her up with a running shoe company? I think that would be phenomenal. She was a noted celebrity even then, universal, certainly at least in North America, figure, and she was a great image for any brand coming up. So person I was working with, the colleague said, "Oh, that sounds great. Who would you suggest we team her up with?" And I did some homework, and I looked at Nike and Adidas, and they were $34 billion companies even then. It's like talking to God. God's not going to listen to me. I wasn't, I couldn't even go there. And I did some homework, and even New Balance at that point was not a public company. They were doing $2.5 billion in 2012. Now that's a lot of money. I agree to everybody in the world, but not in the running shoe world. When you're comparing it to a 34 billion or 35 billion, it's peanuts. I don't mean to look down. Of course not, it is. But the key element here is you have to remember is they were smaller. And if you studied their apparel, particularly, it sucked the woman apparel. It was terrible. It really was non-existent. And they were missing out. I think they knew that, quite frankly, but I'm not sure if they really knew what to do. And it was still a bit of and it was corporate, but it wasn't public. So you could talk to them. Okay, if you could get to them. So I said to the person I was with, you know what? After doing some research, because I knew they could use a Heidi Klum, and New Balance still has a great running shoe. It's iconic. They've been around almost
Mm-hmm.
100 years, and and anybody who knows anything, it's a brilliant, beautiful brand. But they weren't as aggressive as Nike or Adidas getting celebrities, sports. They're still not. Certainly, then they were nowhere near that. And I saw all that, and I knew nobody at New Balance, of course. So I said to the person, you know what? Tell Heidi if it's okay with her. We need her permission. I'm going to reach out to New Balance. So Heidi loved it, of course, but she asked the person I was with, "Can I ask you a question? Who does Myron?" She assumed, "Who does Myron know at New Balance?" And he said, "Nobody." So she stopped for a second. She was quiet. She says, "What do you mean nobody?" Nobody. So may I ask a question? Yeah. How is he going to reach out to a company like New Balance if he doesn't know anybody there? He said, "Leave it to Myron. I think he'll find a way." And she said, "Okay, if he could do it, fabulous." A year later, we did it. They're in Boston, Massachusetts, is their world headquarters, as we know. And after many, 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 many tries, but I knew I had something, Kathy and Mary. I knew that New Balance could help Heidi, and Heidi could help them. I knew it. They got to be really very short-sighted and blind from a business perspective not to see it. They saw the opportunity, of course, and it revolutionized their brand from a woman's perspective, as a woman's, which they needed to capture
Mm-hmm.
that customer. It was an
Yeah, I was
opportunity
Right.
going
They
to
waiting.
did.
ask. I was
Yeah.
going to ask you, is New Balance the only, or at the time, was New Balance the only brand that had a woman representing it to the public?
Uh, Maybe to my knowledge. I mean, they didn't have anybody until Heidi Klum, and then they sold it to new. But to me, there was a void. They were badly needing something to rejuvenate their whole brand and to get exposure quickly out there. Heidi Klum was the answer. So that's why if you Google
Mm-hmm.
today, you'll see HKNB, Heidi Klum New Balance. That's the brand. So it's wonderful for Heidi Klum, of course. Why not? And it was wonderful for New Balance.
And
And now,
I did mention in the introduction that you brokered quite a few people with brands.
yes,
And so can you
yes.
share a couple more stories
Oh, I'd
besides the
I'd
New
love to,
Balance one?
and I also would love to share. I think it's important how what's the word I'm looking for? How destructive fear can be. So let me take Sesame Street for example. Um, I had the idea back in 2014, the depths of my depression and hitting rock bottom, and this is really crazy. And I happen to know somebody in Canada who had the license for Sesame Street. So I sent him an email, and I'm telling you, this is exactly the way it happened. I mean, You would think this is a movie, but this is real life. I sent him an email. I said, absolutely verbatim, I said, so and so, because I tend to like to shortcut. I can't stand corporate things. I can't stand too much red tape because I'll never get a win. Never get a win. And it's just going to undermine everything I do. I know that. So I sent him an email. I said to him, so and so, I have an idea. He said, what's that? This was 2013, 2014. I want to create a business we called it Brandest. We created an acronym, which was combining brands and travel. Okay. So at that point, the idea was, I said, you know what? Maybe we could create a children's travel. You know, Sesame Street's very big on education, obviously for kids. So if we could curate children's travel and call it Sesame Street Travel, that could be very cool. Like that, it was an idea. This is 2012, remember, or 14 or 13. So I sent him an email. I said, "What do you think? Could you put me in touch with somebody in New York?" He loved the idea. He sent an email right away to the head guy in New York. You got to hear this. It's unbelievable. The head guy in New York answers me in 10 minutes. The good thing about business and people, if they love what you're doing, they get in touch with you right away. It's business. If they don't, you might as well be dead. You'll never hear from them. Okay? Very, very, they just don't have the time. He got in touch with me, sent me an email. Who am I? I'm a nobody. He should only have known where I was. And he said to me, Myron, I love it. Brilliant idea. This is the head guy in New York City of Sesame Street. And he says, I love the idea. What's next? When do you want to come to New York? Oh my God. You ever hear the expression, be careful what you wish for? So he said, I really wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. So I start to panic. And I didn't know what to do. And believe it or not, and he invited me to New York. He really wanted an app. I didn't know what to do. And I never executed. I'll be quite frank, I never executed. He waited 2-3 years for me, and I could never execute the brand until it just disappeared. I did the same thing to show you how nefarious and destructive, and the fear was corroding me, like something could do to steel. I got in touch with the people from FIFA, the World Soccer Body Association, and I reached out to them because I knew FIFA was coming to North America, and they were wanting to see me in Las Vegas, and I told them I could not make the appointment at the end after spending a year, and they could not understand why. The panic just suffocated me. So it took me many years to overcome all that, but I did make the connections. I did make the extension in spite of all the liabilities I was living with. It's absolutely it's a crazy story. Crazy.
Well, what advice do you have for budding entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs over the age of 50? What would you say to someone
Uh,
who wants to start a business and doesn't know how, or even have the
well,
feeling they might be a success?
one of the important things I would say, and I learned, is uh, either virtually or physically get out of the house and go meet like-minded people. Find like-minded people that are living, thinking, or working on what you're doing. Find mentors, find maybe coaches, or find people that are already doing what you're doing. Then go a step further. Push yourself. Identify them. Reach out to them. Somebody's going to connect with you. Trust me. They want to talk to you as much as possible. Most people are very generous, very benevolent, and very helpful once you reach out to them. That's the hardest part. Talking to them is the easiest part because you're going to be like rejuvenated. And then make an appointment, whether it's virtually or physically. Go meet them. Go see them. Go participate. So that's going to get you excited. That's going to get you motivated. That's going to catalyze all the great stuff about it. Then, you know, uh, action is like the antidote to depression. Okay, so you've got to act. I learned that if you're not, then comfort is going to destroy you. There's no question. People can compound themselves with comfort, and it's just going to destroy you, or they can compound action and growth. Regardless of what you do, even if you don't succeed, something is going to happen. Somebody's listening to you. Someone's going to reward you. And if you don't believe it, God knows if I'm living proof, because so many times I could not get out of bed. So many times I felt like almost suicide. I'm 70 years old, people. Listen, if Myron can do this, anybody can do this. Okay. Anybody can do it, because many times I never thought I would be talking to, let alone be talking to you guys, that I'd be even surviving or able to reinvent myself. In 2.5 years, $35 million in real estate. I was just brought on board by a major health people company in America out of Michigan to be their key business development person because I'm very good at strategic partnerships. There's nothing I can't do if I want to do it. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But it
But you
took
know, a
me
lot of people,
seven.
just
Yeah,
wait until they know enough, or they wait too long because they wait till they know
they
something
wait too
about
long.
something. But you're
Well,
saying a better mindset is to jump in and start.
yeah, because you know what? You figure it out along the way. It's like sometimes it's called improvise. Okay. And if you're waiting for perfection, you're gonna dead. You're gonna be dead. You're gonna die before it happens. There is no perfection. It just doesn't exist. So unfortunately, you're gonna wait. And the thing is, we don't live forever. I know it's a cliche. So whether you're 25 or 75, it doesn't even matter the age. I would act with a sense of urgency. You do not have it forever. 25 becomes 30. Even people that are under 30, it doesn't matter the age. You don't have forever. It's hard to believe when you're 25 or 30 that you think you have forever. I know you do not. 26 comes once, at least to my knowledge. If you're lucky to have twice, then you're really doing something that none of us understand or figured out yet. Okay, God bless you.
Oh, some of us have that. Some of us have 26 every year.
Right,
Well,
right, right.
intellectually, but
Or
the
when Jack
body and
Benny was
everything.
39.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is, it goes by. It goes by in a snap. Okay, literally. Okay, so you got to. As what I know, it's easier said than. Of course, it's easier said than done. But that's it. You got to consciously, every day remind yourself, work on it. Whoever inspires you, people, movies, music, do anything to get you in a very good frame of mindset. I know it's a cliche, but the cliches are cliche for a reason. Okay, they're not by accident because they are right. Because they are powerful and they are definitely pillars of any kind of successful life. And I can't stress
I'm
enough.
energized hearing that.
No, but I can't
So,
stress enough. Also, Kathy and Mary, one more thing is the big deal is, like the famous old song said, it's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory. You got to have, however it is, it's a big bonus if you're lucky to find someone to love you and you love them, whoever it is, woman, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, son. I don't care who it is, but someone that just loves you no matter what for what you are. Because at the end of the day, I know it's going to sound a little dramatic. You can sound me weeping, but I've learned at the end of the day, it's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that matters is love. It's the only thing because that's what makes us who we are. And if you think it's anything else, at the end of the day, when you don't have any more days, all you're going to think about is that because the rest means nothing. Just a pile of sand.
that's so true.
That's just
Well,
my opinion.
Myron, how do people recognize and identify opportunities, and how do you help people uncover them?
You know what? That's a very good question. That's a challenging scenario. I think that I think you always have to be careful and cognizant. And I think some of the ways that I've learned to recognize opportunities is not by approaching it myself, Mary. In other words, I have colleagues I talk to, people I respect. So even today, when I see an opportunity or I see something that may interest me, I run it by people. I run it by my wife. I respect her because she doesn't tell me what I want to hear. She tells me what makes sense. She's a businesswoman. She's a smart lady. But only her. She has her point of view. I know her personality. We sometimes agree to disagree. So I have a diverse group of people who are very different types of people, different than me too. I respect their opinions. I ask them. And then I take a consensus and I do what I think I need to do for me. Because at the end of the day, I have to be responsible to me. So number one, I would talk to people that you respect. If you don't, you got to have somebody. Find them. I don't care who they are. That what do you think of this, John? Or what do you think of this, Alice? Or whatever the case is. They'll give you an objective opinion. They should, professionally, business, whatever it is. And then at the end, and then you do your homework, your research, and at some point, it's a calculated risk. But I would tread slowly. Start like not a probation, but start carefully. You know what I mean? Start very carefully because you don't know anything until you start it. Like my dad used to say, the only thing that matters is time itself. You could tell people you love them, you could tell all that thing. It doesn't mean anything. The only thing that means anything, if you're still there and it's still the same after 20, 30, 40 years, honeymoons are honeymoons. They mean nothing and they mean everything. It's a start. That's all it is. No more, no less than that. But going back to opportunity, also what speaks to your skill set? What speaks to where you're comfortable with? If you read James Clear, famous book about habits, he articulates this brilliantly. You know what I mean? So do yourself a favor and tackle things that number one you gotta love, because again I learned this too late, not too late, but I learned it late. If you don't love something, it's very hard to fake it. No matter financially, very, very hard. And you're not going to be great at it. Okay. Very hard. So it's a bit of a compromise at times. I understand that financially and what you love. That's always a challenge, of course, but find something that you love that's not work, but not work. Talk to people, get collective consensus opinions, do your homework, do your research. And then at the end of the day, it's a calculated risk.
Well, you've talked quite a bit about developing successful businesses and broker partnerships, but do you feel like in your case it's instinct or serendipity or nurturing relationships? Is it combination? What do you feel is like your number one uh, deal
Something. It's
with
a great
that?
question, Kathy. I love that question. Up until I met this real estate investor, if you recall in the beginning of the podcast, I told you I met this
Mm-hmm.
gentleman, uh, uh, and so I think, and it was serendipity, or someone said somebody sent us. I mean, he should have been there. It was a networking session. This was maybe the 1,000th networking session after years and years and years I went to, not the 1,000, hundreds of them. It was not a real estate networking. It was a general entrepreneur. He had no reason to be there. He was 33 years old. We were not talking about real estate, Kathy. We were talking about general business. They were all young. They were all mainly in their 30s, yeah, which is why I love. You don't get too many people 60s and 70s going to these things. Thank God. Okay. So fortunately, it was all people. Could I get yeah, whatever the reason. You get some, but it's isolated. But generally, exactly. And it's and they're beginning their life, so they need to learn and grow and find, if they're smart enough to realize that. And 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 he and it was 8 o'clock at night. He had a family, kids, and I don't know what he was doing there. It was strange. And he came there to listen and learn. And then he started, when people asked what everybody does, and there were only about 12 people. He said, "I'm in real estate, of course." And that's how I knew. And we started to talk. Again, remember, I had no real estate experience at that time. It's only 2.5, 3 years ago. And I listened to him. I liked what he was doing. I thought maybe there was an affinity, a kinship. And I can't explain why he was there, but I was there. I met him. And even after that, by the way, he disappeared on me for 6 months. He had an issue. But I'm being a jackhammer. I text him every day. I called him. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, most people would have blown me off. He did not. He loved the fact that I was so persevering. Okay. He had a personal issue. He raised his head 6 months later, called me up and said, "I'm ready now to meet you." Showed you. It's ready now to meet you. So you tell me how this happened. I don't know. But I think if you keep trying, you're going to get many like Babe Ruth. He had many, many, many strikeouts until he hit his home runs. Many. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, it's good enough for the Babe. It's good enough for anybody. Okay. So you gotta strike out, you gotta take a lot of shots. Most of them you'll miss, but some you'll hit. The good thing about it, you don't need too many hits, Kathy. Some of them you need a couple, they're grand slams. Like in real estate, there's millions of dollars of deals. I'm not in the volume business. I'm not making hot dogs. Or hamburgers. Like I'm not McDonald's. So I don't need to do 1,000 deals a year. I need to do X amount small, but I need to make hundreds of calls to do those. I know that. That's okay. That's the way it is. I'm aware of that. You have to understand that. Unless you're Tony Robbins, maybe it doesn't matter. But I'm not Tony Robbins, and most of us are not. And I don't think I'll ever will be. God bless Tony Robbins. Okay, we're different people, and he deserves it. So I can't open doors like that.
Whoa, that's great. Um, you were kind of stepping out of your box when you met him and talked to him. So, how does an already successful company step out of the box?
When I met the real estate gentleman,
Yeah, or any company as far as the
yeah,
companies you've worked with
yeah.
or others.
When I met Joe, the real estate guy, I was really, I had nothing going on. I was on my way. It wasn't good. I was working for people. It wasn't good. 2.5 years, 3 years ago, I told you. So when I was 68, 67, something like that, 67. And I just, I had this thing about me that says, I'm not going to surrender. I'm not laying down, dying. I'm not giving up, I guess. Otherwise, I would have. And I didn't. I even went to therapists and all that. You know what? The therapist never helped me. They tell me the obvious and a lot of BS. That never helped me at all. I helped me at all. I kept going. I'm telling you the truth. That didn't help me. Very nice people, but I had no patience for that garbage nonsense. I have to help me. That's my case. Okay. That's my situation. I'm not saying that works for everybody. That's my situation. And then I get, as you can see, I get excited, which I think is important. So when I talk and I really love some people can feel the passion and excitement. That goes a long way. They know I'm real. You can't fake it when I'm doing it. I'm not fake. I'm real. I'm equally, if you were invisible, I was invisible and saw me in certain scenarios, like with certain members, the people that I know, you would laugh because I'm extremely the opposite, silent. My wife knows me because I have nothing to say. So if I'm not with any, I'll be frank. I'm not black or white, but if I'm excited, I jump in like to the pool, right? Even though I with trepidation. But if I'm not impolite. I'm not rude. I just won't say anything. Let's say like family dinners, and on holidays and all that. I don't have much to say because most of it's gossip. I just don't have the time or the patience. So I'm not disrespectful because I love my family, but everybody has families are families. They are what they are, right? So I love them. And so if they're listening to this, I'll have my issues with them, but I just don't have that kind of energy I don't have that energy of patience. So
Well,
I'm
we
just
talked a little bit about serendipity. Is there a story
right.
in there, maybe how you met your wife?
You know what? Kathy, you're absolutely kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like people that read
Intuitive.
you're very much so. I'll tell you why. So Lori and I met. Yes, there is. The answer is yes. And for everybody's right, we met. She's from Brooklyn, New York, and she moved here literally because of love. I met her standing in line 38 years ago at the taxi stand at LaGuardia Airport. So anybody, if you want to find love, this is something I love LaGuardia Airport and the New York, New Jersey Authority. Go stand in the taxi line at LaGuardia Airport. Don't get on the taxi. Keep going back, and maybe you'll find someone that who knows where it'll happen. But it was like 86, something 85. They encourage you to share a ride. She was this beautiful woman. I mean, I'm not shy. All she could do is say, "I don't want to talk to you," right? You got to keep asking. The worst that can happen is nothing's going to happen. Nothing happened anyways. But she had this smile that just blew me away. She didn't even say a word. And I asked her if eventually she's behind me. I went, and as you can see, I'm not shy. So I asked her if she wants to share a ride back to me into Manhattan. And she could have said no, of course. What can I do? Nothing. But she said okay, and she said okay, but you're paying for it. I said okay, I'm paying for it. Already, I loved her, and she said okay, I'm paying for it because she was on a tight budget. She was living in New York. Uh, the rents are extraordinary through the roof. They were back then in '86, and she had a roommate, and she's a buyer, a fashion buyer, and just growing her work and kind of struggling financially. So we shared the cab ride, and we just exchanged contact information. As she'll tell you, I was living with someone then. She likes to remind me all the time, and it's true. So, and she was kind of had somebody, and it wasn't until a year later till we connected. And long story short, also, she's Catholic and I'm Jewish, so that was a challenge too of ours because we wanted to, how are we going to bring up the kids? So back and forth. And she's extraordinary. She compromised and she said, okay, we'll bring them up Jewish. She didn't convert. I didn't care. And she's more Jewish than I am, being Brooklyn, from New York, and in the garment business. You can't get more Jewish than that, in all due respect, right? So she said a year later, we hooked up. And 3 years later, eventually she said, are we getting married or not? We did, even though I was terrified with marriage. We did. And fortunately, that was 36 years later. And one of the best things I ever did, if not, was to marry her. If you met her, you'd see. She's an extraordinary woman. That's
Oh,
my
I bet
story.
she is. I bet she
Yeah.
is. Well, I have a question for you, and it's a
Sure.
question that you always ask other people, and that is, what are you doing that's moving you today to where you want to be and what you want to do and achieve? And what are
Good
you doing
question.
in that respect? And tell us about your plans for 2023 and 2024.
Beautiful. Thank you. Uh, First of all, to keep me energized and inspired every morning. I read a bunch of newsletters. I read the Wall Street Journal online every day. Believe it or not, I just leaf through it. So I do a lot of reading in the morning. Personal reading, some inspirational, some newsletters. I find that valuable. Okay, for me personally, maybe a half an hour. That's it every morning. And I also, I might add, equally important to all my so-called business endeavors and everything, I reinvented myself physically, exercise, diet, all that's important. I cannot stress how important, especially when you're aging for obvious reasons. It's extraordinarily important. Um, I'm also constantly networking. I'm not sure. Constantly reaching out to people who I think there may be a like-mindedness. And a lot of people don't respond. That's okay. I keep that's okay. It doesn't matter. We keep moving on. I never knew them. They never knew me. Uh, but some people do, and I keep reaching out. I keep connecting. I can't afford. There's a thing I believe: shyness costs you money. You can't afford to be shy in life, or it costs you your dream. Because
Mm.
accountants could be shy. No disrespect to accountants, but they could be shy. But because they can. But most of us cannot afford to be shy. So I reach out to a lot of people, Kathy and Mary, and I basically reach out to them for advice, for inspiration, to share ideas, to share what we're doing. So that's led to contacts. My work I'm going to be doing for this healthcare company is a direct result. I became very close friends with a gentleman, my mentor and coach, Joe Fortier, who's uh, now the CFO, by reaching out to him in another company, and he's in Salt Lake City, and we became tremendous friends. That's strictly by reaching out. So multiply that, and I attend constantly attending networking and events in real estate and others, because there's no other way I can grow if I don't meet more people and engage in relationships. So, to give an example, my investor started at zero. It's over 60. Real estate agents, I have over 1,000 on my inventory list. I all started this at zero. So every week I reach out to more and more. So I think that's a big deal. Reaching out to people, connecting to people. That's helped move me forward. People that you think you're like-minded. Obviously, I'm not going to reach out to somebody who's a chemist. No disrespect. I think chemists is great, but they're not going to have anything in common with me. I don't think generally, or vice versa. And they're not going to respond, of course, probably. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't respond to me either if I was them. So
Well,
that's the bulk of what I do. Yeah.
you know, I wanted to we've talked a lot. You've given some great advice today to people. But if you had to boil it down to like one main takeaway, what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today?
First of all, I cannot thank you immensely, both of you, for your time and patience for having me on. I have to say that it's been an honor being on. I value this, and it's tremendous respect for your podcast and the effort and time. I know it's like it. It's a big it's a big thing to do, and it cannot be underestimated. Anybody who does podcasts knows that. Okay, that's number one. Most important. Most important. The biggest takeaway, I mean, there are many, is action, 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 action. Do it. Don't be afraid. I got something by Mary Tyler Moore. God bless her. She said, "Take chances, make mistakes. That's how you grow." And she's right. Take chances, make mistakes, and that's how you grow. She's not alive anymore, but she was a phenomenal individual. She's absolutely right. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
love that.
Love that.
Thank you, Myron. Thank you. Our guest
No,
today
thank
on
you.
Late Boomers, thank you. Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Myron Welik, author of The Jackhammer Effect, How to Break Down Doors for People Who Believe They Can't, podcast host, speaker, fearless entrepreneur, and the jackhammer. Please visit his website, myronwelik.com, and find him on LinkedIn and read his book and check out his podcasts. They're both terrific.
And we want to
Love,
remind our
anybody
listeners
wants to
also to,
reach out? Yeah, yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry about that.
yeah, please do. But we want to
I'd
remind
love
our
to.
listeners also to please
Go
subscribe
ahead.
to our new YouTube Late Boomers podcast, our rather our YouTube our new YouTube channel with our podcast on it. Don't be fooled by our competitors that are called late bloomers, because we are booming. Do your boom
That's right.
boom,
Booming.
Mary. Boom, boom, boom.
I love that.
Also,
I
please
love that.
subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on your favorite platform and write to us on our website, lateboomers.biz, B-I-Z. And we hope that our podcast content is bringing you joy and inspiring you to live your happiest, best, and most productive lives. And thank you again, Myron.
No, thank you. Amen. Happy, productive life. Well put. Very well put.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.